Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our Sacred Sunday Sit. My name is Jessica Mingus. My pronouns are she, her, and I am so happy to welcome all of you here to see your smiling faces in our little Zoom boxes as everybody settles in. Um, in case we have any new folks who are joining us today for the first time or who haven't been here for a while, I will just share a little bit about how our session will unfold, and then we'll get started. Um, so in just a few moments, our guiding teacher, who is leading our session today, will take us through a meditation of about 20 to 25 minutes. Our practice closes at 11 o'clock Eastern, and we take a moment to reflect on Dāna, and then we go into the Dharma talk for the day. So each weekend we have a different theme. Bart will share a little bit about what we'll be exploring today. And throughout the session, if you have questions or reflections that you'd like to share, the chat is open. And whatever you share can be seen by our whole community unless you choose instead to message either me or Bart directly. So if you perhaps want to ask a question but don't feel comfortable doing so publicly, that's a nice way to still hear from our dear guiding teacher. So you're welcome to message me as well. And at 12 o'clock noon, we will open up breakout rooms. So after we have a little bit of time for question and response, we'll share some updates, and then you'll have an opportunity to gather with a couple members of the Sangha in a small group and to continue reflection on our topic for today. And so our gentle reminder and invitation to everybody is to always speak from the I. So we don't want to offer advice. We don't want to suggest to anyone else how to maybe move through a challenge if they raise one. But what we do want to offer is our kind and compassionate deep listening, and to also stay really tuned in to how it feels to be in that practice of either receiving from someone else or sharing and being heard and deeply listened to. So that is 15 minutes, and then we close for the day. So that is our typical routine. And then we always like to begin by just seeing where everybody is joining us from. So Bart always calls this our mini retreat. And the wonder of Zoom is that we're all retreating from different parts of the US, different countries. So it's always a real joy to see where our community is joining us from today. So I see friends in North Carolina and Park Slope, Brooklyn, Montague, Massachusetts, from Vermont, Dear Bart in sunny Harlem, Mariana's in Mexico, friends in Canada, Germany, Ireland, and then we have the west coast of Florida and the US, New Mexico. So how wonderful. We are so glad to have you with us. And before Bart gets us started with our practice, we always like to give each other a nice warm wave. So if you're on video, look and see if there's someone in particular you want to give a warm wave to, or maybe you're looking from little box to little box to see who's here in your community practicing with you today. We are so happy that you're here. For those of you who are on the phone and maybe don't see video, we promise there are lots of warm, smiling faces here saying hello to you too. So, dear Bart.
Thank you, Jessica. And I'm just smiling because Randy Road, he's they are coming from Nickstown, USA. And maybe we also have people from San Antonio. I don't know, but it totally inspired me to do something I'd never done, and that's share online like uh, how much Knicks and basketball in New York City is feeling right now. And I have a 12-year-old son who's really into basketball, and just see him cheer and smile, and it just kind of really brought up a lot of happiness and joy for me. And that's actually our topic for today, to connect to what the Buddha called metta in his language. And that is a Pali word worthwhile knowing. And it's often translated as loving kindness or friendliness or goodwill or goodness. And I'd love to unpack that today with you. Kindness. It's really the foundation of, I would say, all religions, all wisdom traditions. And it has a special place in Buddhism as well. And so today in the talk, I'd like to reflect on what it's like to also connect to it when you're with people that have opposing views. Or what is it like to offer kindness to yourself, which might not be so easy. And the good news is that we can train it. And it's part of our overarching theme of these 10 Pāramīs, 10 guiding principles. The Buddha said, keep training them. And so I hope that we can train on our mini retreat this practice of kindness, this experience of kindness. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is to just drop this question and see what arises. What would kindness do right now? What would kindness do right now? Maybe it wants to adjust the screen or the phone or the body, or in my case, the fan. It's so hot in New York. What would kindness do right now? And especially for this intricate and beautifully interwoven meat suit that we inhabit called the body. What would kindness do to the body? Would it settle back? Would it want to stretch? This whole mini retreat today is about connecting with kindness, to feel it, to realize it's this field of unconditional goodwill. Check if you can find goodness around you. Maybe in the way the chair is holding you, the temperature in the room, or knowing you are in community. Where is goodness in this moment? Can you find goodness or ease in the body someplace? Maybe in a deep breath, or the goodness of letting your belly be soft, unclenching the jaw, and softening the mask of the face. Many acts of metta. If you bring attention to the heart mind, where is goodness in the mind right now? A sense of ease or a willingness to be present, or the goodness of being mindful, present. Kindness is the greatest protection in the entire world. Allow yourself as best as you can to receive it, like the sun. Rays are being received by all things on the planet. Maybe picturing this bright light in the heart area of goodness, of ease. It's as if you're wishing to yourself, may I be safe and protected. May I be happy and peaceful. May I be safe and protected. May I be happy and peaceful. He's checking, where is goodness, ease, kindness? Where is it right now? I mean, it's okay if you cannot feel it. What would kindness do right now? Does something shift if you call to mind a friend, a benefactor, a being who purrs for you or waggles its tail? Can you feel kindness or gratitude? Mhm. You could gently wish for them. May you be safe and protected. May you be happy and peaceful. inviting you to be creative, and to keep remembering and connecting kindness, ease, goodness. Maybe the kindest thing to do is to simply rest. Just taking your time on this little mini retreat. Where is goodness in this moment? Goodwill, love. This wise love knows that we are interconnected. It's beyond agreements, it's beyond words. It's this field of kindness that we can tap into within ourselves and around us. This kindness doesn't belong to anyone, it's universal. What if you were to wish this goodwill to all beings, near and far, young and old, small and little, big, those we agree with and don't agree with? This wise love knows that all beings want to be free from pain and suffering.
Thank you, Bart. So, for our moment of reflecting on Dāna, the Pali word for generosity, um, I found a very short reflection from someone who's writing and thinking on the topic of kindness and generosity. I always really value. Um, and perhaps some of you know him, or many of you know him. His name is Parker Palmer. Um, and I found this short piece that he wrote that I would like to read to you all before I share a little bit of information about ways that you might consider offering some generosity to the Community Meditation Center. So we are fully sustained by the generosity and the care and support of this community in its many forms. And for that, we are grateful. But here's this piece of writing. So it's called The Grit and Tender Gravity of Kindness. And for those of you who were here a couple of weeks ago when I read the poem Kindness by Naomi Shihab Nye, he actually makes a reference to that poem here in this piece of writing. So he says, I've always been impressed by the alchemy of the human heart, by its capacity to transform the suffering that comes to all of us into compassion and generosity of spirit. I know so many people who have used their wounds to become wounded healers. Instead of growing bitter and passing their pain on to others, they've said, this is where the pain stops and the love begins. They've become better able to offer understanding and compassion to others, not in spite of their suffering, but because of it. Kindness by Naomi Shihab Nye is a powerful reflection on suffering transformed. It's a gritty, sometimes grim poem about a virtue we too often romanticize. But in a world that can be as heedless and heartless as ours, kindness must grow from deep inner roots if it is to stand strong and be sustained. As the poet says, before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. As I read this poem, I give thanks for all the wounded healers I know, and I ask myself what I might do today to allow suffering, my own and others, to open my heart up instead of shutting it down. That was Parker Palmer. And I see Rose loving my backyard Sangha space. Thank you. So I will share some information about ways to contribute to the CMC if you wish. But I just really loved this piece of writing and this idea of this is where the pain stops and the love begins. And I think that that is really something that we can say of our generosity practice. So thank you all. Dear
Mm.
Bart, over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. That poem keeps coming back. That's something. So last week, we reflected on this question, what am I devoted to? I love that question. It's a great way to even start your day. And even if you have a full day with a full to-do list, that question kind of brings back to what's the core here? What was really beautiful in our chat from last week was someone wrote, and I forgot who it was, I am devoted to kindness. And kindness is also part of this huge list that we've been exploring at CMC called the 10 Pāramīs, or you could also call them the 10 guiding principles. Guiding, helpful principles to let us move through life. And kindness is number 9. We only have one more left after this one, and it'll be taught by Pilar Jennings, which will be on equanimity. Let's just pause again, and throughout this whole talk, I would want to invite you to keep connecting to kindness, because that's where the training is. And I love the image that Jessica used, that she was reading about, that it comes from our deep roots. But there's so many ways how we can connect to goodness, to goodwill. One of the most famous expressions the Dalai Lama ever made was answering the question, what is your religion? And he said, kindness. Kindness is my religion. We teach our young children the value of kindness. When I study other religions or wisdom traditions, it is the guiding principle. But what makes it special in Buddhism, perhaps, is that it's not just a value or a guiding principle, but it can also be trained in meditation. Kindness can be trained in a formal way, and there's two ways you could do it, and we'll explore both in this talk. And the first way of training kindness is to keep coming back to it over and over again, so that kindness becomes your meditation object, the felt sense of it. And this is sometimes referred to as a concentration meditation practice, where kindness is your object. And we'll explore that a little bit today. But kindness can also be trained in mindfulness meditation, because it's the kindness that allows us to be with whatever we are knowing because we are aware. If you pause just right now and maybe come back to the body, feeling the body, and pause, can you notice that there is kindness in holding this experience with you, in being with this experience with you? For me, it's all summed up in two words: pause, relax. Remembering, oh yeah, awareness. Can I meet it with kindness? And just dropping that question, what would it do right now? Maybe it wants to adjust your body posture. Maybe it wants to take a deep breath. So for this week, I really want to encourage you to keep noticing kindness, feeling it, bringing it in, and recognizing it. And the Buddha had a very powerful expression. He would tell his monks who were afraid, arm yourself with kindness. He had given the monks a pretty intense task, and that is to meditate in the jungle at night, the whole night. Halfway through, they came back to the Buddha saying, we're too afraid. There's all these forest spirits who are projecting horrible images, which probably is a metaphor for our own mind when we are afraid. The Buddha said, did you arm yourself with kindness? And he taught them that when you really stay connected over and over to kindness, that it becomes this protective shield. It protects us from our own minds, but it also has an impact on our surroundings. And I think it's a really helpful practice also to connect when we are faced with all the dukkha in the world. That was also so beautifully reflected in that poem that Jessica shared. I keep thinking that we are probably living in the most deeply divided time in history. In our current social, political, even our personal landscapes hold so many different views and opinions, creating so much division. I remember a friend of mine, she shared during the season of elections. She said, one moment I was watching TV and I just cringed with anger. And then literally a few seconds later, I was cheering on because it was the other party that was having an ad on TV. We're living in a deeply divided and polarized world right now. And what I personally find mind-boggling is just how many people there are with completely different views than mine about climate disruption or immigration, poverty, healthcare, international conflict. And conversations or being with people with opposing views can be so challenging. But if there is a moment to pause and relax, it's right in the midst of those. I recently found myself doing exactly that as I was with a friend whom I know in the Netherlands, and we spent time in their house. And I recently connected with them, and it was kind of friendly at first. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, I realized that he has a completely different view on our current New York City mayor, which at first, like, okay. But it kind of came as a surprise. I kind of had assumed that he was on the same team, if you will. And I could feel a jolt in my body. And then I also felt tension and disbelief coming from him towards me. And what happened, what was really interesting, as I paused, I noticed the tension in my body, but I also started to realize a very strong sense of I, of self. And I had all these ideas coming up in my mind how I was going to give him arguments from my point of view. I felt very warm all of a sudden. I just did not see that coming. But I paused into the body and I relaxed physically. I actually stepped back a little bit. We were both standing at the time. And then I realized I'm never going to convince him. So I decided to listen. And I actually learned a lot from why he was having that view as someone who grew up in a Latin American country. And it felt kind for me to back off in the way I did. And I felt empowered by just pause and relax, by kind awareness, to hold him and the tension that he was experiencing. And the Buddha taught a lot around views and opinions. So even these deeply divided times, they've been from all ages, of course. But he said, look and recognize when you are attached to your opinions or views, when you're clinging to them. So it's not the view that's causing all the suffering. It's our attachment to it. And then the Buddha made an interesting point. He said, with the arising of clinging, a sense of self becomes really strong. And that is something that we can see and practice. And I noticed when I was with my friend, because what arose was the sense of, I am right. You are wrong. I was convinced, like, my way of thinking is the way. And sometimes when we are in the midst of arguments and being with people who have strong opposing views, I can even feel a little superior. It's almost a shame. I'm almost ashamed to say it. All conditioned by this clinging to my view. So I just want to pause and see how that is for you. Do you recognize that pattern? When you engage maybe with neighbors or family members, friends, colleagues, who have a very different view on something. And then the question, of course, is it possible to have kindness be present during these interactions? So see if you can bring someone to mind. This might be a little challenging. Bring someone to mind who you might have some difficulty with. That's some of the instructions the Buddha gave. And what would it be like to send them a wish of goodwill? Even when you might not be feeling goodwill. And this is one of the most radical teachings the Buddha suggests that we do as we train in kindness. So what I sometimes then say to myself is, may you be safe and protected. Sometimes I can say, may you be well in body and mind. And sometimes when I do it, something shifts, maybe not in the moment, but a little later. And so you cannot force this loving kindness to be present with you or forcing yourself to share it, but you can bring in that invitation to try it as a kind of as a form of being devoted to kindness. And I wasn't always open to it. I was like, let me just do the mindfulness meditation. But it's actually become this great extra tool in my toolkit. I actually tried it last Thursday and it didn't work at first. Last Thursday, finally, something that we've ordered online for Lou, his nice new shoes for the dance he had yesterday, Friday, I mean, his middle school dance, he had new shoes. And we were constantly checking on the phone, when will the shoes be delivered in our building? But when we came back to the house, the package was opened and the shoes were stolen. It's happened so often in our building. And I just felt the anger, the disappointment. They're like, oh no, not again. The last thing I wanted to do is wish them goodwill. And it actually reminded me of a story that Joseph Goldstein uh, tells. He was invited to do a day of meditation um, not long after 9/11. And it was with first aid responders who were really there on ground zero. And there too, he tried to teach kindness meditation, where you're not only sending goodness to friends and benefactors and yourself and neutral people, but also difficult people. And he said that there was a couple of firefighters who said that they cannot send any goodwill or goodness to the terrorists. And then Joseph explained how this type of goodwill that we're talking about is infused with wisdom. It's the wisdom that knows that we are interconnected. And he said that we can connect maybe to it by changing our wishes. And so what he suggested to do with the firefighters was to bring a difficult person to mind and go, may you be well and no longer cause suffering. May you be well and no longer cause suffering. And that's exactly what I did after my anger dissipated. And in the evening, and also I was able to share it with some neighbors that again, something got stolen. But it was like, may you be well, as I pictured just this energy who took it away from me because I don't know who did it. and no longer cause suffering. And I totally felt a sense of ease, both in my shoulders and in the way my jaw was clenched. So this practice of training kindness is a brave one. And the word is metta in Pali. And it's closely related to Mettā in Pali, Mitta, which means both sunlight and friend. And so what we're talking about is this radiating friendliness that is all around us. And do you believe the Buddha when he said, it's the greatest protection in the entire world? I first had my doubts, but I'm more and more moving towards feeling he's right. And it is a refuge when we feel uncertain or anger or fear. One of my friends, she was a meditation teacher in the Netherlands. Her name is Ines Roelofs. She once chuckled and she goes, Bart, I think the Buddha made a mistake. He said all things are impermanent except Nibbana. But I think Mettā is permanent too. It's always here. And she visualizes as this field of light that we can connect to every time we pause. She connected it to gravity. It's always here. And the Buddha, he described it in so many ways to keep encouraging us to train this parami. And this is my favorite description. And just see what happens to you as you hear the Buddha's words. He said, like a caring mother, holding and guarding the life of her only child, so with a boundless heart of love and kindness, hold yourself and all beings as your beloved children. I'm just pausing to see if you can connect with goodwill, goodness, friendliness. Can you trust kindness? This is from George Washington Carver, who was a scientist, environmentalist, agriculturist. He said, how far you go in life depends on your being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and strong. Because someday you will have been all of these. This metta, or true wise love, it deeply knows our interconnected nature. It deeply knows that all beings want to be free from pain and suffering. When we would practice loving kindness in the juvenile detention center, especially the boys would often say that we have the saying, Bart, don't mistake my kindness for weakness. It's powerful. And metta is not about agreeing with people with other views. It's beyond agreement. And I remember when we were hosting a Sunday hybrid session with CMC, both online and in person. I remember someone asking the question, how to deal with extreme negative circumstances and violent circumstances. Now remember, we paused as a whole community and we felt into this reality of violence that is a real part of the lives of so many. What would taking refuge in metta look like? Is that even possible? That's what we reflected on. What would kindness do? And we reflected on, can this wise love support us in standing firm, speaking up, or even fighting back? And the Buddha, throughout his teachings, he was almost extremely serious about the potency and power of metta. The most graphic teaching I can find is called the simile of the saw. And in that particular teaching, the Buddha is telling the monks that even in the most of extreme circumstances, if you can, keep connecting to goodness. And he has this graphic image. He said that even when bandits were to cut off your limbs with a saw, still connect to this field, this protective field of kindness, of metta. So that is really the invitation. Maybe not in these extreme cases, but for this week, I really love to encourage you to connect to what you could call this boundless field of kind love. And then I found another teaching of his that almost sounds like a sales pitch. If you hear this, you do want to practice metta. Just see how it lands for you. Here he's talking about the benefits of loving kindness practice. First one, your dreams become sweet. You fall asleep easily. You waken contented. Your thoughts are pleasant. Your health improves. Then the Buddha said, angels and devas will love and protect you. And then he said, kindness, when you have it, animals will sense your love and not harm you. People will welcome you everywhere. Your babies will be happy. If you lose things, they will be returned. And guess what happened with loose shoes? I let the people know from the company we ordered, and they said, that happens, we'll send them again. Then the Buddha went on, as another benefit of kindness. He says, if you fall off a cliff, a tree will be there to catch you. Isn't that a beautiful image? And then the last one, benefit of loving kindness. The world will be more peaceful around you. What if the Buddha is right? See if you can again connect to metta right now. Connecting to being tender or compassionate, friendly, grateful. Maybe in settling back a little bit. Maybe the imagery works of receiving metta like rays of sun being received by all the animals, all the beings and plants, ocean, land, receiving it. Or maybe the word works better of connecting with it, like when you receive a hug, connecting. The Buddha also suggested to try to radiate this kindness. And he would suggest reflecting on radiating it above you. So if you send that energy above you to all the beings, or below you, in front of you, behind you, or left from you, right from you. It's as if you're glowing like a warm rock, kindness. So there's so many ways to play with connecting and keep feeling it. The Buddha also mentioned to direct it to ourselves, which might be challenging. I found this passage where he said, you can search the whole universe and not find a single being more worthy of love than yourself. You can search the whole universe and not find a single being more worthy of love than yourself. And so in a way to kind of spark metta or to keep connecting with it, in our tradition, often we use phrases. And so when it comes to kind of connecting with metta for ourselves, two phrases I often use is, may I be safe and protected. May I be happy and peaceful. And I'll sometimes breathe in with may I, and then I'll say safe and protected. Breathing in, may I, on the exhale, happy and peaceful. But just like Joseph was teaching the firefighters and first aid responders, be creative. It's about the actual feeling and keep connecting to the experience of it. That's what the training is about. So I want to give a little homework if you don't mind. Maybe commit for this week for 5 minutes, just like we did last week, and just with mindfulness meditation, to loving kindness meditation, where you for 5 minutes keep connecting to metta, maybe just simply receiving it or sending it to yourself or to a benefactor. Just keep connecting to it. And maybe at the end, see if you can share it with all beings, even those we have difficulties with. That could be one suggestion. Another thing is to incorporate it in your mindfulness meditation, where you might start first with, what would kindness do right now? Can I connect with it? Is it helpful to wish for myself? May I be safe and protected? May I be happy and peaceful? And then start with just being present with whatever arises. Pause, relax. And just see if you can play with being devoted to the training of this ninth parami of kindness. And make sure that you include yourself from time to time. Because one of the greatest obstacles to kindness is our sense of unworthiness, our self-judgment. The Buddha is, how can I say it, rooting for us to love ourselves, to love yourself. We deserve to be loved by ourselves. We cannot leave ourselves out of this field of loving kindness or compassion. It doesn't mean it's always accessible. I remember I was once teaching in this juvenile detention center, and it was in the summer. It was hot like a June day is in New York. But inside that juvenile detention center, it was freezing. The AC was like so cold. I always had to bring an extra sweater just to go into that facility. And I remember I came in with the theme of kindness and compassion. And I asked as a question just to start the session, how are you being kind to yourself? And I remember Amaya, she came a lot to the sessions. She got up in the circle and she goes, not for me. I don't deserve any love or compassion or any of that stuff. Bart, I'm out this week. As a matter of fact, she goes, give me one reason why I should love myself. And I've just felt this jolt in my body, and everyone was looking at me. I felt put on the spot. So I said, let me just pause for a moment. Please don't leave yet. And then I remembered a teaching from Gregory Kramer, meditation teacher. He would often tell us, he still does, recognize when kindness is already happening, especially self-kindness, self-love, because we sometimes forget. So I had that in my mind, and the fact that it was freezing, and all of a sudden I had to think of this. I go, Amaya, is it as cold here at night as it is when I come in the afternoons? And she goes, yeah. She looked at me a little suspicious. Why do you want to know? And then I asked, have you ever had a cold arm when you wake up in the middle of the night because it's been out of the blankets? She goes, yeah. What do you do? She goes, I tuck myself in. Why? And then I slowly had like the courage to go, well, could you say that that's a mini moment of you being kind or compassionate to yourself? And she paused and she goes, I guess, I guess. And then the other girls in the circle were like, yeah. And she came back to the circle. And then she goes, Bart, you got me. I do that. We all deserve love. That was our conclusion. And sometimes we even are kind to ourselves without even noticing it. So for this week, also notice these little moments when you might be taking care of the body, washing it, keeping it cool. And I just see in the chat that Carol is writing that the New York City subway is a good place to practice too. I agree. So traditionally, it's taught that you start with connecting with kindness for yourself. If that's not where you want to start, be creative. Maybe you want to start with someone that you feel easeful with. Or as I also do sometimes, Carol, I sit on the train and I just sneak around, look around a little bit, not staring, but I connect with kindness and I'll just go, may you be safe and protected. May you be happy and peaceful. And I'll go to the next one. May you be safe and protected. And I'll include service dogs. And sometimes then I can even include people who are very loud or dripping their food or just keeping their wrappers there. They don't even pick their trash. May you be. And sometimes I'll be creative again. May you be a little more cleanliness. But it's fun to do this because you are connecting again with this field of metta. So feel creative. That's all I'm trying to say. And that's what the Buddha kept saying too. So I'm aware of the time. I just want to wrap up and just also hear from you. How do you connect to kindness? How do you practice it? But before doing so, let me just pause for a moment again. Because I've shared so many things, I think the key thing from this particular talk to take away from that, I hope, is to drop the question from time to time. What would kindness do right now? And add the right now. Don't forget to add that. What would kindness do right now? And then just see what might happen. There might be a physical release of tension in the jaw. That was what kindness is doing. It might listen deeply to someone that you totally disagree with. It might actually be appreciating yourself. It might also be a little more compassionate and tolerant to people with very destructive behavior. Tara Brach, meditation teacher and great writer, she wrote, each of us has done the very best we could given the conditions of our lives. Each of us has done the very best we could given the conditions of our lives. So first of all, I want to thank you for your kind listening. And I really hope that you feel invited to share how are you kind to yourself? Or how have you been trying to practice kindness for difficult people? Or anything else that you might want to share in the chat will be so appreciated. And then Jessica and I will reflect together with you on it. But check first, what would kindness do right now?
There's already so much wonderful sharing in the chat, but I will begin with what Rose shared, which is during lockdown, I did an online Pāramīs retreat with Booker, who shared these phrases from Larry Yang. I like them because they keep me honest. When I first started practicing, I foolishly saw myself uh, in the first line. I will be mindful and loving of all that arises. Now, if I'm honest, I mostly see myself in the last two or three phrases. Kindness can be the most difficult thing, and perhaps that's why it's so powerful. So the
Mm.
words from Larry Yang are, can I be mindful and loving of whatever arises? If I can't be loving in this moment, can I be kind? If I can't be kind, can I be non judgmental? If I can't be non judgmental, can I not cause harm? And if I cannot cause harm, if I cannot not cause harm, can I cause the least amount of harm possible?
Mm. Just pause with that wisdom and thank you for sharing, Rose. And just appreciating Larry's creativity. And also then again to reflect backwards that you're holding yourself in kindness when you were creating harm. I was holding, in hindsight, the kindness of all the negative stuff that I was sending to the person who stole our stuff. This is about being real and about this deep commitment or devotion to kindness. Thank you, Rose. Thank you for bringing Larry in. Oh,
Lisa shared, sometimes when I'm having a hard time giving myself metta, I rephrase it as, may I look upon myself with eyes of kindness and compassion. Putting it that way creates a little distance where I can almost look upon myself from the outside in, which helps reach that feeling a little more easily.
thank you for sharing, Lisa. I'll repeat it one more time, your phrase, and see how it feels for you. May I look upon myself with eyes of kindness and compassion. As I'm sitting with that, Lisa, I have to think of something that Jack Kornfield used to teach when I was teaching with him. He said that if you have to go into a very difficult situation, pretend as if you are the Buddha. And just can you kind of feel as if you are the Buddha in your body, like someone looks at oneself with these eyes of kindness and compassion. And he said, if there's another spiritual person like Kuan Yin or Jesus, that you kind of feel like the embodiment of that unconditional love from these beings, and see if you can feel that in your body. Like just, I haven't thought of this in the longest time, but that just arose when you were sharing, Lisa. It's just another way of how can I invoke that sense of unconditional, kind presence. Thanks, Lisa.
So there's a wonderful question from Karsten. And apologies, just in case anyone hears my little puppy in the background. Um, he says, anger can sometimes be useful as it's an empowering emotion, so long as it does not overwhelm. Is it possible to combine anger with metta?
Yeah, I think so. It's like an anger that energy of anger used without wanting to harm, but to be firm, like, I don't agree. I want to take action. But it's coming from a place of, I would call that equanimity. I really wish that on myself sometimes as someone who's a parent, because you can feel it in your voice too. When you really disagree or want to put your foot down, but it comes from clarity. It comes from non-harming. Yeah, I think it's possible, Carson. That is just my gut feeling. Yeah, I love this from Caesar, Jessica. Caesar writes, moment to moment, I forgive myself for my imperfections. I think just forgiveness is another expression of metta. So metta is not just kindness. Maybe I've used that word too often. It could be expressed as forgiveness. as equanimity, as gratitude. But it all has this underlying, I keep calling it field of goodwill, that we even look at our own imperfections from that perspective. It reminds me of Lisa's Mettā phrase. Thank you for sharing, Caesar.
Janet shared with us last year, caring for my mom before she passed forced me to be in direct contact with and again targeted by two abusers in my family. I told you I was struggling with how to give them loving kindness. Thank you so much for giving me the may you do no more harm phrase for them. This is still the most I can do.
And dear Janet, let that be good enough. Let even the intention, not even feeling it. That's what Sharon always says. Miss loving kindness. Sharon always teaches in the beginning, maybe fake it a little. It's okay. You still have that intention, that devotion to it. That's actually what got me into it because I was like, I don't know if this is for me. But it now has become like an anchor, very often to come back to. And especially Janet, and this is for everyone, if you feel when you have that stability of mind, that you can actually, I was going to say, coasting in kindness for a while, then it's really helpful to bring up a creative wish for people that you usually don't have access. You don't have access to Mettā when you think of them. So I really invite creativity. And I so appreciate all that you're sharing.
Mariana said, sometimes just bringing an inner smile feels like a simple
Yeah.
yet radical act of kindness towards myself and life as it is.
Yeah. Mm. And it can be the simplest of things, an inner smile, but also maybe smiling to someone in the street. Gently in New York City, you never know, but still, especially the ones you know in your neighborhood, it gives me a little like, feeling. Even this morning, I went outside because Chantal, my wife's a photographer, and she took pictures of a man who always sits outside on Lenox Avenue. And she had them printed and they were going out. And she goes, I'm not sure if I want to carry all these photos. So I go, I can check for you if he's outside. And I saw him and I was like, just happy that I connected with, that I saw him and that I knew he was going to get Chantal's pictures. And it's just these little moments where we can recognize this sense of, this feels good. Then you're in touch with Mettā. And then I was standing outside, and it is hot in New York, but I was just grateful for the warmth, the beautiful green colors right now of the trees. I love what Beth wrote, Jessica. Fierce compassion. Makes me think of my dear friend Devin Barry. And Diane writes, I have trouble with the loving part of loving kindness. I really appreciate that what was said to the firefighters, that they weren't asked to love. And I have trouble with the word loving kindness, the word loving too, Diane. Jane writes, I prefer the word Mettā. I do too. But I think just kindness is enough. Sounds like a title for a book. Just kindness is enough. Even in Dutch, it almost sounds too mushy. Liefdevolle vriendelijkheid. Vriendelijkheid, friendliness. That connects, that feels more for me. So I can relate, Diane. I want to share what Nancy wrote too, Jessica. Nancy writes, I am kind to myself by often taking a walk out my door and into my neighborhood. Um, I, I enjoy and feel gratitude for Mother Earth, the plants, and the creatures out there. Again, metta. All these manifestations, kinds of metta. And then Anna writes, it's so simple sometimes. Reminding myself to wiggle my toes. Maybe you want to try that right now. Just wiggle your toes for a moment if you can. And then she goes, look up at the sky and expand my belly. Gives my body the freedom to relax and tap back into what your friend called the tapestry of gravity kindness that is all around if we want to touch it. Ooh, delicious.
And I think on that delicious note, we can
Oh
begin
yeah,
to
it's time.
transition.
My bad.
Yes, but thank you all for your very generous sharing. And as we always say, we will read every
Yeah,
word. And we also always make it a practice to share the chat from the previous week with a guest teacher. So Pilar will get to soak in
yeah.
all of the wisdom here as well before she joins us on Sunday. Um, just a couple of quick notes for me, some matters of scheduling. As I had shared last week, if you were here, we are done with our in-person gatherings for this part of the year. So we will be resuming hybrid sessions in September. And we are very excited to share that we also will have three in-person only day longs between September and December. So those dates are officially on the calendar. If you go to the website to the event calendar section, you'll see the dates there, and registration pages will be open this month. So I'll make an announcement to everyone and send an email when the registration is open. But just so you know, we have some wonderful opportunities to gather in person coming when the weather gets a little bit cooler. Um, that is all that I can think of in terms of my important notes before, dear Bart, if you have any last thoughts to share with the group and a
I do.
declaration of merit, please.
I just want to start by thanking you, Jessica, and thanking you all for your kind presence. I thought I was going to end with my favorite metta practice when you send it to all beings from Zenju, Earthland Manual. It goes like this. May all beings be cared for and loved, be listened to, understood, and acknowledged despite different views. May all beings be accepted for who they are in this moment and be afforded patience and be allowed to live without fear of having their lives taken away or their bodies violated. May all beings be well in its broadest sense, be fed, be clothed, be treated as if their life is precious. And may they be held in the eyes of each other as family. May all beings be appreciated and feel welcomed anywhere on the planet. Be freed from acts of hatred and desperation, including war, poverty, slavery, and street crimes. May all beings live on the planet housed and protected from harm. And may they be given what's needed to live fully without scarcity. May all beings enjoy life, living without fear of one another, and be able to speak freely in a voice and mind of undeniable love. And then she closes, she said, may all beings receive and share the gifts of life, be given time to rest, to be still, and experience silence. May all beings be awake. Thank you.